Rosanna Tufts here again with a follow-up to my previous video, What is Morality? I made that one in response to the right wing's demand to
bring morality back to the country,
which is really code for
we gotta stop kids from turning gay!
As if gay is the worst thing a person could possibly be, when there are other, far more disgusting and evil things a person could be and do. If you haven't seen What is Morality, please do. It's only 17 minutes, because this is a companion piece to it, although I expect it won't really matter which order you watch them. As soon as I finished filming it, it occurred to me that there was another, deeper question underneath what's driving this obsession with bringing morality back, and that's the belief many of us were raised with. The belief that one life as a physical being is all any of us ever get, and then bam! Our souls are either damned to eternal punishment in hell or eternal bliss in heaven. I scripted this out on a full moon that's supposed to be the most auspicious full moon of the year, Guru Purnima, which means full moon of the Guru. It's the time of year when we are supposed to honor the teachers in our life who have given us true wisdom. As it happens, one of those teachers is on tour in North America right now. Amma the Hugging Saint has come to us from India after a 5-year pandemic-induced absence. And not a minute too soon, right as our country is on the verge of collapsing into a race and gender-based apartheid theocracy. Or, dare I say, was on the verge? That auspicious full moon was on Sunday, July 21st, and what happened that day? Once we got over the stunned shock of suddenly finding ourselves without a candidate for president at the top of the Democratic ticket, the new, completely flipped script that emerged over the next 24 hours galvanized one party and caught the other party flat-footed. There's a Hindu myth about a demon whom no god could defeat. All of the gods tried and failed, until they realized that they were each trying to take on the demon by themselves. So they came together and created a goddess with 20 arms and a different weapon in each hand, combining all of their powers. Goddess Durga became like the queen in chess, able to attack or defend more squares than any other piece, and can move in any direction. Does this wisdom teaching sound a lot like what has happened since the full moon, as all the major Democratic leaders are coming together to back Kamala, who, as a former prosecutor of predators, fraudsters, and cheaters, has quite a lot of Durga energy herself? As does Amma, a living, ego-free Satguru with superhuman strength, sitting there for 10 to 20 hours without a break, giving hugs and blessings, turning no one away, completely present with each person who comes to her. And this year, doing it with a neck injury, needing to wear a hard cervical collar, and still glowing and radiant as ever, completely happy to greet you. Name me one evangelical zealot who can do that. Joel Osteen? Kenneth Copeland? Franklin Graham? Please. I first met Amma 12 years ago in Chicago, when Jupiter planet of the Guru was transiting over my rising sign of Taurus. Now, 12 years later, with Jupiter here in Taurus again, I am taking on the role of Guru myself. At least for purposes of this video, I'm putting on my clergy hat. This full moon cycle began at the new moon in the opposite sign of Gemini. If Sagittarius is the sign of faith without question, Gemini is the sign that questions everything. That's been the dynamic in play throughout July of 2024. Now, don't get me wrong, humans need faith. But faith is more than just a belief in a particular God. Faith is the feeling that out of all the crazy things that happen to us in our life, somehow there's some meaning behind it all. It's part of some larger story, and there's something you're supposed to learn from that and then put into practice in your world so you're not still blundering on, a victim of circumstance. You actually do something to make up for the injuries against you, maybe even make life better and fairer for the generations that come after you. Sagittarius and its ruling planet Jupiter are the energies that help you get that sense of meaning. Example, me finding out last year that I've been autistic my whole life. Sure didn't have that on my bingo card, but it cast my entire 6-decade story arc into a whole new light, and then turning that around into doing disability advocacy, turning out to be surprisingly good at it, and actually being paid for it under a grant. People who knew me when would never have imagined I had it in me. But what if the things you've been taught to believe, the truths you've had groomed into you as articles of faith, and you either never questioned them or were terrorized into believing you'd be punished if you dared try, are corrupt teachings based on hate, fear, grievance, resentment, exclusion, instead of compassion, kindness, love, generosity, with peace and serenity in your own heart. Gemini, the new moon that kicked off this cycle, and its ruling planet Mercury, are the energies that make you examine your beliefs. What is the story you've been telling yourself all this time? How accurate is it? Do you just believe stuff without really understanding it? What if everything you've been taught to believe in is based on a faulty assumption? Have you had a trusted friend that you respect ever tell you,
Bro, that's really messed up, man. Sick even.
so by the time you come around to the full moon of the Guru, you've had a chance to sit with this and resolve to replace those outmoded beliefs with ones that will bear healthy fruit for yourself and your world. Now, following on from the morality questions I asked in the previous video, it's time to ask, how is the belief that all pregnancies must be carried to term, and the belief that two sides of the sexual binary are the only valid states of existence, and that the two should never mix or flip, are ultimately both driven by a belief in a concept that most, if not all, Christians were raised with.
You only get one shot as a human in a physical body. and then you are either damned to an eternity of punishment in hell or an eternity of bliss in heaven.
This is such an automatically accepted part of our cultural scenery backdrop. I'll bet a lot of people never think to question it. In my role as guru for a day, I propose...
You have been taught a lie.
Remember, as an autistic person, I tend to see things a little differently than most people. If there's hypocrisy or malarkey going on, I'll be the one to speak up, point out how it doesn't make sense, instead of blindly accepting or complying. Now, if you take the time to really look at this belief, doesn't it seem rather fatalistic, pessimistic, even nihilistic, that a supposedly loving God would set you up to fail at life, and then it's game over?
Ah, but that's why Jesus' death and resurrection is necessary for salvation.
I hear you say. Hold that thought. We'll get there. First, let's look at the other assumptions that logically follow from this one-shot theory. If you presume that this is truth, if this is the only dogma you've ever been exposed to by the information silo you've grown up in that curates what you're allowed to learn, and you never consider the possibility of any other options, well, gee, the pro-life position actually makes sense in that context. Stick with me here, because if you abort a fetus, in theory, its soul will never get another chance to occupy a human body. And if you believe that, if you assume that there's a finite number of bodies on Earth for souls to occupy, then the next logical conclusion is...
We're required to breed as many bodies as possible.
Especially when combined with the belief that Christianity is the most superior religion in the world. No other religion ought to be allowed to exist. You have to ensure that most, if not all, of those bodies are Christian, produced and raised by Christian parents to outnumber anybody else. Never mind the economic feasibility of it, or even whether the parents are psychologically mature enough to be parents. And you ever notice how the same people who want to save all the fetuses are the same ones who want to yank away every single safety net for raising them? Why, in God's name, would you save all those lives, only to condemn them to a life of despair because it's too difficult to be sustainable? Make it make sense! The one-shot theory is also at the root of the belief, which has zero basis in scientific fact, that
The instant fertilization happens, it is automatically ensouled.
a soul is already attached, when the body-to-be is merely a zygote. It's not even an embryo yet. Which in turn means that all of the thousands of IVF embryos that have been fertilized in petri dishes and incubators awaiting implantation in a living womb, souls are attached to all of them too, even though statistically very few of those fragile embryos will prove strong enough to take. Seems to me this is an awfully limited zero-sum argument. If God is love and can do anything and has no human limitations, wouldn't he, she be able to create more opportunities for those souls to experience life in a body? Surely God must know that not all biological processes are going to be viable. Heck, even vegetable seedlings have to be thinned before you can move them out of the greenhouse, so only the strongest ones will make it to full growth. God has their own sense of timing that cannot be rushed by humans. If you, as a priest or a politician, try to play God, that's taking the Lord's name in vain. And you know which commandment that is. But if you believe all this pretzel logic that arises from the one-shot theory, then the next conclusion after that...
Gays, lesbians, and transgenders are deliberately taking themselves out of the available breeding pool. How dare they? It's not just that they're having sex with the wrong people and trying to pervert mere children into joining their ranks, which is disgusting enough. The real reason why they can't be allowed to exist is because they're opting out of God's plan to populate the earth with Christian bodies for Christian souls.
That's the unspoken assumption underneath homophobia. Do you see now how so many human rights violations, so much cruelty, so much parental shaming, trauma caused to untold billions, are driven by a religious zeal to restore morality to society, and how that in turn is driven by a belief in the one-shot theory of life, which is increasingly looking like absurd poppycock, cancerous even, its cells proliferating until they eat the entire planet. And if women's birthing capacity is so sacred to the right wing, then why don't they have a goddess on an equal footing with God? You can't have judgment without mercy. A theocracy is all judgment, no mercy. Just ask Iran. Spoiler alert! The image that right-wingers think of as being the great Father God was painted by a gay man. How else could he have depicted the musculature in such loving detail? And even the first chapter of Genesis describes God as Elohim in the original Hebrew, which is a plural, gender-fluid word. Come to think of it, this one-shot theory is probably also why so many fantasy stories revolve around a quest for immortality, to hang on to the one body you've been given for as long as possible. And the characters who attempt to do so are almost invariably cast as villains. You ever notice that? Why are they villains? Because in order to have that immortality, they think they have to destroy those they believe to be unworthy, undeserving of their ideal world. Sound familiar? One of the rare literary exceptions is the vampire character of Le Comte de Saint-Germain, who uses his extended life to become a wise man, help humanity where he can, find love where he can. The presumption of one life and one life only is, of course, very different from the Hindu and Buddhist belief that souls get recycled. They reincarnate into new bodies, and the afterlife is like neither the Christian heaven nor hell. For most souls, the afterlife is merely a stopover en route to their next incarnation. As the Bhagavad Gita says, nothing is born and nothing ever really dies. Almost every indigenous culture, before it got colonized, has some variation of this idea, combined with both ancestor worship and worship of the spirits of nature, which again is very different from the official Christian notion that nature has zero inherent divinity. It's there to be exploited, not revered. Unless, of course, your Christianity more closely resembles the creation spirituality of Dr. Matthew Fox. All of this begs the question, where did this idea of getting only one shot at life come from anyway? And the binary cosmology of heaven and hell that goes with it. Why do Christians believe it to be so superior to other afterlife theories? Did the early Christians actually believe in reincarnation, like the Greeks did, but rejected it later, when they cherry-picked the scriptures that best suited the aims of Constantine's Roman Empire? And why did they discard it? Since this video is running a little longer than I expected, I'm splitting it here. Stay tuned for the answer in A Case for Reincarnation. Together with What is Morality, these 3 videos will form a complete series. I'm Rosanna Tufts. See you in the next and, I think, final video.